Hello there, and welcome to the latest one of our Saturday Spotlight interviews. My name is Anna Amelia from North East Animal Rights, and I'm delighted to welcome along Robert Pownall, who is the founder of Protect the Wild. So, welcome, Robert, and thank you very much for agreeing to do this for us.
Hi, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Lovely. Okay, great. So, we're going to go straight to the questions, and the question which I ask every single person who we've spoken to is, could you tell me about your vegan journey, please?
Sure. It's a bit of a long one. I started campaigning against fox hunting back in 2015. I was 16 at the time. I wasn't even vegetarian when I started campaigning against it. And I think quite quickly my Facebook feed, I mean, back in those days, Facebook was the predominant platform everyone was using, including teenagers. And my feed slowly turned to one that showed more of what was actually going on to do with types of animal issues, including that of what was happening within slaughterhouses and the animal agriculture industry. And I think I had a growing feeling of I'm a bit of a hypocrite here. I'm campaigning against these people on horseback setting dogs on wild animals, but yet here I am still consuming animals every day and benefiting from them as products. And over the period of a few months, my feed slowly, as I befriended people within the anti-hunt world, they were sharing obviously other issues that were going on. And so I was consuming more content to do with animal cruelty. And yeah, the feeling got too much to the point where I was like, I need to stop eating dead animals here. And I then went vegetarian. It would have been, yeah, around the age of 16 to 17. And then I was vegetarian for about a year or two. I kept sort of deluding myself that oh, it would be too tricky to transition to going vegan. It's too complicated. What would I actually be consuming? I went to uni and it was actually a Earthling Ed visit. He did a lecture where he showed one of his films. I think it was Land of Hope and Glory. I think that may have been the title of that particular film. I watched it. It completely exposed what goes on dairy farms. I was disgusted by it. I mean, I couldn't even watch it. I was just had my head on the desk and like the sounds of what was being shown was bad enough. And just the next day, literally, I went vegan finally. I obviously, when you do it, you have that guilt of feeling like, why didn't I do this, far sooner? But yeah, and then gradually realized, this is actually quite easy. There's so many things you can eat and drink. And obviously now in 2025, it's probably the easiest it's ever been to access vegan food. There's no excuse. I mean, you go into any restaurant or supermarket and there's meat alternatives if that's the sort of thing you're after. And of course, for health reasons and the environment and the animals themselves, it's the best thing you can do. I think it's the thing everyone should be doing by norm. It's sad, really, that there's even a wording for veganism and vegans shouldn't need to be named as this exclusive group that doesn't support and pay people to harm animals on your behalf. But yeah, here we are. And in many ways, with what we're doing at Protect the Wild, we want to be a forward-thinking wildlife protection group that advocates for all animals, not this speciesist approach that many other wildlife groups have, I think, and other wildlife charities that, you know, glorify particular beautiful mammals and yet don't want to talk about the elephant in the room being a lot of their supporters and donors' consumption of animal products. So long term, we want to bring in more messaging around veganism, and talk more about our relationship with animals more broadly and use
Yeah.
wildlife as sort of a good entry point to do so.
Yeah, you've made some really, really valid points there. I mean, you're right. It should be the baseline, shouldn't it? Veganism should be the baseline. Um, and it's interesting that you're talking about obviously the entry point, like fox hunting or another kind of issue around animals could be the entry point towards it, but it should always be the direction of travel. I've had similar conversations with a number of people who are in sub groups or in other other organisations where it isn't traditionally vegan, but there should be, and they know the hypocrisy that they are kind of they're promoting. For example, we a lot of us rescue animals. And we work with other people who rescue animals, but those people will go home and then they'll sit down and eat a chicken when they've just rescued a bird, you know. And then there's groups who will go out and like you said, when you were a child, you went out there and you were shouting at people on horseback for killing foxes. But actually, you go home and then you eat another animal. So I think it's really, really important that we do, people make the connection and then marry the two together and look at it as a I don't know, the ethical stance that we all need to take in line with, like, for all animals, not just one particular type of animal.
Yeah, no, I quite agree. I think we're slowly getting there, and it's obviously a tricky conversation to have with people, especially, because very few people, I mean, I don't myself go out sabbing or monitoring hunts, and for the people that are brave and the brilliant people that are
Yeah,
doing that, it's tricky to bring up that thing of
yeah,
why aren't you also
yeah,
practicing the same sort of level of thinking about the cruelty inflicted on animals in your own personal life too.
yeah,
But I think over time things are gradually definitely going in the right direction
yeah,
with it. I think there's been some big turning points recently with particular individuals, celebs. I mean, people like Chris Packham, who for many years wasn't vegan and
yeah,
has quite rightly called out the RSPCA and their shameful assured scheme, the assured slaughter
yeah,
of animals, and quite rightly himself, Caroline Lucas, Brian May have stepped down from their roles at that charity
yeah,
because of their refusal to
yeah,
do anything and to drop that ridiculous scheme. So I think things are heading in the right direction. People within our space sort of know, or at least are vaguely aware of the fact that going vegan and not consuming animals is probably a good thing
yeah.
to be doing. But yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it?
So how did you talked about you being sort of vegetarian, after you got involved with fox hunting, but how did you actually get involved with fox hunting and wildlife crime? And then how, all these years later, how did you decide, like, why did you decide to set up Protect the Wild?
So yeah, I was just quite a political 16-year-old,
Right.
and in all honesty, came at it from an angle of I couldn't stand the Tories. I was just literally scrolling on Facebook, saw a change.org petition. It was like the biggest one at the time, talking about we need to stop David Cameron legalizing fox hunting. And I was just angered and like, what the hell? And
Yeah.
didn't know really too much about it. I'd seen a couple of segments on the TV years before and thought, oh, that's not very nice. And on signing the petition, there was a little link to like a Facebook group of people that cared about the issue. And I was like, screw it, I'm on Facebook so much. I'll join this
Yeah.
group of like-minded people. And then quickly realized there wasn't. So the main slogan at the time, you may remember, was this hashtag keep the ban was the
Yeah.
main anti-hunt phrase being used by people like Ricky Gervais, and it was all over social media sites. And then I thought, oh, there's not actually a proper page here with that name.
Yeah.
And then I was like, screw it. I had spare time after school. I set up a Facebook page called Keep the Ban.
Yeah.
Grew really quick. I think in a week it was on about 10,000
Yeah.
followers.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of mistakes through it. I mean, I definitely should have done better with crediting groups and the stuff that we put out. I
Mm.
think those are my only main regrets in terms of the output of stuff we were posting.
Mm.
Um, but obviously, the more I got into it and the more I was reading and seeing what was actually happening, very quickly within those first few months, I became incredibly uh, angry and passionate about doing everything I possibly could to end it. And then the page grew and grew over the following years. I went to uni in 2020, studied politics, was still doing it as more of a hobby,
yeah,
dedicate a couple of hours to it every single day. And we weren't doing a lot. We were doing well in terms of raising awareness, I think it'd be
yeah,
fair to say. I mean, in some months we were hitting millions and millions of people
yeah,
with posts talking about
mm,
what was actually happening and, the classic like and share
yeah,
if you're against fox hunting. And I think we successfully built a little movement of
mm,
people, but it wasn't any more than that, really. There'd been a couple of demos, but
mm,
it all mainly revolved around online
mm,
lobbying and petitioning. I
mm,
know that we did loads. It was so frustrating, actually. I mean, we were there with a campaign group they were called the National Distrust at the time,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I think it was 2017, it would have been 2018,
mm,
and we massively went in on helping them with trying to stop hunting on National Trust land, and they did this vote, and it only failed because of discretionary
yeah,
vote. It didn't
yeah,
go through by like literally a few hundred,
yeah,
and I was pissed off at the time. Like there was a lack of involvement from other organizations within the movement at the time to like sort that, and we could have won that years
yeah,
earlier than we ended up doing it obviously a lot later on.
mm,
But yeah, I left uni. I think we were on about 500,000 followers by that point, and we were mostly just on Facebook.
mm,
And then I was applying to random jobs, random social media things, nothing that I was passionate about. Graduated during COVID, and
mm,
a friend of mine just said, "Why don't you try going full time with this and like doing it
yeah,
properly?"
mm,
And that's what I did. Set it up as a proper non-profit organization.
mm,
Um, and yeah, here we are about 4 or 5 years later,
yeah,
after
yeah,
going through quite a lot. We've now got a team of really passionate people that work at Protect the Wild, some brilliant journalists, an animator who we work with
yeah,
full time. And we do so much more than just campaigning against fox
yeah,
hunting now. We obviously changed our name about a year and a half ago
yeah,
to encompass the fact that,
mm,
broadly speaking, we work to end hunting, shooting,
yeah,
and the protection of badgers. And yeah, we've done a hell of a lot of stuff in that time. Lots of undercover
mm,
investigations,
yeah,
animations,
yeah,
I think it's about 600 or 700 articles now talking about what's going on,
mm,
annual reports on hunting itself, what's happening.
mm,
We've helped equip activists, I think about at least 30 or 40 groups now. We've given things like drones and cameras to help those in
mm,
the field, and lots of different mini campaigns and successes
mm,
along the way. I'm really proud of our output and
yeah,
where we are
yeah.
right now.
I mean, yeah, you've sound. I mean, I feel absolutely exhausted listening to all the things that you do there. I mean, yeah, it is a really, really effective, way of, obviously campaigning, raising the awareness because you're reaching people who are not necessarily going to be vegan, who are just totally. It could be against the Tories, it could be because they hate the fox hunting, they hate they love wildlife. So there's so many different angles, and all these people are coming together to support you. I mean, we had a talk a couple of weeks ago with a member of a local wildlife group, Northumberland Hunt Watch, did a talk about fox hunting, and in the audience, it wasn't predominantly vegan. There was probably about a third vegan, and the rest weren't. But they came together, and they obviously are now looking at other aspects of their how they come into contact with animals and looking at, we're going to be having talks on animal agriculture, for example. But there's some brilliant groups in our area. I mean, we'll have loads of really good SAB groups and monitor groups and wildlife groups as well. And they do, they go out in the field and they do lots and lots of really good work. Um, but I think what people were surprised at that talk, which Lynn gave, was obviously we have a law in place and people think fox hunting has been banned, which it has been, but we know that there's so many loopholes and we know that foxes are still being killed. So could you tell me about, why the current law is not fit for purpose and what would you like to see happen?
Yeah, I could be hit hours.
In
I mean,
5 minutes.
if you look at the Hunting Act, essentially it can be read as pro-hunt
Yeah.
legislation. So fundamentally, it doesn't actually ban hunting. it bans the intent of hunting wild animals, and that's the fundamental problem with it. It's not written as really a piece of law to protect animals at all.
Mhm.
And throughout, there are a whole host of different exemptions
Mhm.
and loopholes that hunts have been using for the last 20 years. So when it was banned in 2004, the next day, all of these hunts that for, generations have been hunting wildlife turned around and basically said, we need to now come up with some new smokescreen, a
Yeah.
cover up for how we can continue, but make it look like we're not deliberately killing wild animals.
Mhm.
And that smokescreen was trail hunting. So hunts claim they follow an artificial scent, literally made of fox urine in
Mhm.
many cases,
Mhm.
as a means of being able to still go out and kill foxes and other
Mhm.
wild mammals. Hare hunts use that same excuse. Of course, stag hunts use a slightly different exemption. So there's an exemption when it comes to scientific research and observation that's within the Hunting Act. So stag hunts are going out claiming that they're pursuing stags in the name of science,
Mhm.
yet not a single stag hunt have produced a single paper of
Yeah.
this so-called research of how deers behave when they're being chased by hounds. It's just absolutely ludicrous. I mean, stag hunting, there's only a few packs left in the south west, but those hunts that still are going out are rampant. They're still killing stags. And of course, we've still got about 170 so-called trail hunting packs left who are frequently breaking the law too. And they use different exemptions in order to carry on their disgusting activities. I mean, some hunts of claim that they're using hounds to flush foxes to birds of prey to be shot. That's another exemption that's in the Hunting Act, which very rarely does happen. Um, I mean, what we want to see happening, first off, trail hunting needs to be just completely
Yeah.
banned,
Yeah.
for a start. Terrier work again needs to be completely removed. So the hunts have what are known as terrier men who go out with terriers,
Mhm.
and their job is basically to be sent underground to
Mhm.
bait and to bolt foxes
Mhm.
back into the landscape to then be hunted. And in doing so, they of course are often seen damaging badger sets, which is completely illegal. So they need to sort that element of it out too. And they need to remove the exemption allowing the use of dogs below ground
Mhm.
to protect birds for shooting, which is another loophole being exploited by these terrier men as well.
So
I think
So
what's
can I
key.
just, sorry, could I just jump in there? Just a couple of things which, so the Terrier men, because I've often wondered why the Terrier men, I mean, I remember listening to a talk before Christmas about Terrier men's attendance at these events. So they are obviously the hounds are above ground, but so you're saying at the moment it's illegal to have the terriers in the obviously in the back of the quads in the boxes in the back of the quads at the moment, and that's a loophole they're using because I thought that was illegal to have terriers to go under.
So it's not technically illegal for the terriers to be present.
Right,
So you can use, I believe, two terriers can be sent underground
right,
to get a fox if that fox is then immediately shot,
right.
as long as that fox is claimed that that fox is potentially causing damage to livestock
Oh,
or
right, okay. Yeah,
farmers'
mm,
properties in some capacity,
yeah,
properties being animals. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of actual protection of foxes within law, it's they've really not got many.
yeah.
So, I mean, ludicrously, when Countryside Alliance and the pro hunting groups, when they're asked what terriermen are doing there, they claim that they're there to mend fences, and it's just like ludicrous,
Yeah,
but yet don't
yeah,
want to comment or say anything about the fact why terriers are present in quad bikes with spades, with
yeah,
it's like, well, clearly because they're being used to procure foxes to be hunted.
yeah.
I mean, we did we had an undercover investigation specifically on the use of terriers to procure foxes to be hunted. So
Mhm.
what we filmed was a terrier man actually on a nearby farm. So there was a hay barn, and he sent in a terrier into this hay barn to flush out a fox. And this fox was then seen running behind the back of the barn, and the terrier man's mate then communicated that with him and said, "Yeah, we've got one. It's just run out." And then you see literally hours later, the same day, that particular hunt, the Vale of White Horse hunt, a scene going past the exact same hay barn
Right.
in question, and then with a local landowner present pointing towards the direction of the fox and telling where the hunt to go. And yet, all of that evidence and proof, if you want to look up Protect the Wild VWH investigation, you can see the whole footage. It's the most blatant, deliberate fox hunting you could ever see, and yet it couldn't secure any convictions under the Hunting Act. Like even with the most blatant proof and evidence, the law is not working. The key problem is with what I alluded to earlier is this intent thing. You
Yeah,
need to prove that a hunt deliberately and in the intent was to kill that wild animal,
yeah,
and the hunt master in question has not tried to get the hounds off the
mhm,
scent of that animal too. And you've got to get it all on film.
mhm,
It's a nightmare. It's why we've had, I think it's about 40 to 50 convictions
mhm,
under the Hunting Act since it was passed,
yeah,
of which most of those that are actually hunt specific. There's been hundreds of convictions actually under the Hunting Act, but the
mhm,
hunt specific ones, yeah,
mhm,
were limited to 40 or 50. And it's what the pro hunt side love to quote and bring up as
yeah,
argument for saying, oh, clearly we haven't got an issue here.
yeah,
If there was so much illegal activity, well, why have we only been done this number of times? Obviously, ironically, it's our case for why the Hunting Act needs
yeah,
to be strengthened and we need a proper ban because week in, week out, groups on the ground are
yeah,
seeing clear illegal fox hunting happening, the hunt not calling hounds off.
yeah,
Um, Wildlife, and
mhm,
yet we see so little convictions. And
yeah,
the police are even saying it and acknowledge it too. Matt Longman, who's the chief police officer in the country
yeah,
on fox hunting, admits and frequently says to the media that he knows trail hunting is being used as a smokescreen
yeah,
by a lot of hunts across the country.
yeah,
He says it was in regarding this whole trail hunting issue, he actually said it was the most farcical era in criminal justice
yeah,
history.
yeah,
It's good though that police officers like him are starting to say these things and
mhm,
are aware that trail hunting is a joke. It is a complete sham.
yeah,
It is why the Hunting Act
mhm,
isn't working successfully. It's why the police are reluctant to
yeah,
then enforce it on the ground
yeah,
as well. Because why would you use resources when the
yeah,
CPS are going to just keep coming back to them and saying,
mhm,
"Nah, you've not really actually got enough in the way of
yeah.
evidence here." So
I
what
mean,
yeah,
a couple of things there to do with the trail hunting. I mean, you mentioned a couple of questions ago about the use of fox urine. I mean, first of all, the obvious question is where is the fox urine coming from? Because it's not obviously not an artificial trail. If they use an actual fox urine, they've obviously got foxes they're getting the urine from. The other side of it is maybe a question. Um, we in like our area, obviously in the northeast, and we kind of like go up to Northumberland and there are obviously a large number of hunts up here. But we have a very, very small police wildlife team. I met with them a couple of months ago, and their team has been decimated. They used to have dedicated full-time officers, and now they have maybe 3 officers in the wildlife team, and they have openly said that they can't attend wildlife crimes unless they're the high-profile ones. Um, and the nature of, I mean, the stuff that we tend to get are things like, like seagull shooting, pigeon shooting, um, and we had an awful one where a fox was probably injured in a road traffic accident and then deliberately finished off by somebody on a bike before we got there to take him to a vet. So, the police are saying that they don't have the resources. I mean, is that a huge issue that you're finding as well? And then the other side of it is that the fact that there's a lot of police who are the rural police, or some of them are actually in the hunts as well.
Yeah, we're seeing both. I mean, ultimately, the police need to be given better search and seizure powers. They
Yeah.
need to be given the ability to confiscate vehicles, phones, animals that are being used. I mean, it was good to see recently. I know with Northant Hunt Sabs published that the terriermen working with the Cottesmore Hunt did have their terriers seized, and within the terrier box, they said that what was found was if it was a bolt gun, was also located in the quad bike too, and some other ridiculous, I can't remember now, but it was another ridiculous piece of equipment that's often used to kill wildlife. And it's just like so blatantly obvious why
Mm,
those people are present on hunts. But
mm,
yeah, as you've said, it's an issue when it comes to how they allocate time, and it's a lot. I mean, it can be done. I mean, when you look at how policing um, takes place with hair coursing, for instance. I recently did a big breakdown, long form video on our channel where we looked at the difference in regards to the policing response to hair coursing to that of fox hunting
mm,
and the reasons why there's such a discrepancy. Obviously, because of damage to land and the farming community puts way more pressure on the police to take action, and it's far easier to catch hair coursers in the act compared to those taking place in so-called trail hunting
mm.
is another key problem we've got. But if the law is tightened, then it will 100% lead to police forces being better equipped when going out to actually take action more quickly. Because if we can get rid of essentially eliminate the activity of going out with hounds on so-called trail hunts,
Yeah.
then it really limits what hunts can reasonably say they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a lot easier for police to say, hang on, you shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z here. The law is way tougher on you, and it's going to be far easier for them to implement. Because as of now, I do feel sorry for the police forces because
Yeah.
what can they realistically do with the powers that they've got? Very little.
Yeah.
The sentencing needs to be increased and looked at too. The fines are just absolutely pathetic for people caught fox hunting. We're talking 400 or 500 quid and a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
But I think it's interestingly why police forces too have turned to community protection notices and community
Yeah.
protection orders as a means of trying to go after, like, actually hold hunts accountable for what's happening. They're having to look at basically other forms of legislation and powers that they've got that
Mm,
aren't covered in the Hunting Act to try and get on top of their behavior and activity. And we know, speaking to monitors who I work with, that those powers and enforcement of those notices
yeah.
do work effectively. We know that when police do go out and check up on what hunts are doing, that it has a really good effect for weeks after, and the hunts behave themselves, and
Mm,
they know that they're being watched by police, and it's being discussed,
mm,
and like you can see a complete shift in
mm,
behavior. So this isn't me saying, for the next few years that police should be giving up and completely not looking at hunts at all,
mm,
but I think they do need to go down explore other routes. They do need to specifically look into other laws, especially road traffic laws and health and safety laws
yeah.
that hunts are breaking frequently. You look at the mainly the use of quad bikes, and I'll bring this up because when this airs, we should have just launched, will be very close to launch, a whole new campaign specifically
Mm,
on hunt havoc and looking at
yeah.
all of the ways hunts are breaking laws or putting the public at risk
Yeah.
that currently really sliding under the radar. And we're
Yeah.
launching a brilliant new mini website
Mm,
that will essentially show every police force in the country and the hunts
mm,
within their area. And it's going to log and
mm,
show with evidence all of the ways in which those hunts in those police force areas
mm,
are putting the public at risk and
yeah.
are using quad bikes how they shouldn't be.
Mm,
You see reg plates not being covered up or not
yeah.
even displayed. They shouldn't even really be using the quad bikes they're using for non-agricultural use
Mm,
too. How they're allowed to even be using them. They're frequently seen with three or four people on them.
Mhm.
We've seen deaths. We've seen tragic incidents involving people pissing around
Yeah.
on bikes, and that's just one element of the havoc caused by
Mhm.
hunts that the police, in the next few years or however long it sadly is going to take before the hunting act strengthened and we get a
Yeah.
proper ban on all of this madness, they need to
Yeah.
start looking at these things too. So that would be what I would
Mhm.
say in regards to the policing side of things.
Yeah. So we're just about to come to the end of our time together. So can you tell us how we can help you? I mean, obviously, first of all, follow you on your pages, on your social media. But are there any more practical things that we could be doing as well?
I think if you've a lot of things, if you don't feel like you want to get involved with direct action or don't have the time, obviously I would 100% recommend if you do to get into contact with your local hunt sale group or hunt monitor group if you want to get more involved in the field. Speak to as many people as possible. Like I'm saddened by even when I speak to people my age or friends, how little people know about what's going on in the countryside. Share the stuff that we're putting out. If when we launch these campaigns, write to your local police and crime commissioner, write to your local MP,
Mhm.
continue to speak to those in power about why this issue matters to you and why it is a vote winner.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, continuing to contact those people who do have a say and can do things.
Yeah.
We've got a few on running campaigns, not just to do with hunting, but the badger cull that you can sign. There's a government petition at the moment. We're trying to get to a
Mhm.
100,000 signatures to force a debate on that. We're not giving up on
Mhm.
any area here. And as we move into the next year or so, our work against the shooting industry is going to really be ramping up too. But yeah, check us out we're on everything. I don't think there's a social media platform left we're not on. And just
Yeah.
look up Protect the Wild and
Yeah.
yeah, see what we're about. I
Yeah.
think that's all. I've rambled a lot
No,
today.
no, no, you haven't. It's been really, really interesting. It's just a very small snapshot, I suppose, of the amazing work that you do. But yeah, I mean, I always advocate sort of people contacting the MPs and those who are the decision makers and the police and crime commissioners because they're the ones who, they need to have animals and fox hunting and that this sort of thing in their post bags and in the inboxes
Yeah.
all the time to keep the profile raised. Because we know it is a vote changer. We know people will be pro or anti, but we know that if we keep on doing this, they realise the side they have to come down on, which is to look at the law and to strengthen the law.
Yeah, definitely. I will quickly end on and say
Yeah.
we obviously have the main petition for a proper ban on hunting
Mm,
closing in on 200,000 signatures. We passed 170,000.
mm,
We've got really neat software where you click sign and it auto populates and fills in an email with the recipients, with the letter, with the subject line, and then you can click send. And the recipient, the government will then actually, the minister responsible will see it coming from you and from your individual
yeah.
email, which is really effective.
Mm,
We do aim to hand that petition in, and it's a brilliant way of course, showing the scale of support there is against hunting as well.
mm,
And you can chip into the equipment fund. We have a specific pot of money
mm,
where all of that just goes into helping activists on the ground as well. So
mm,
that's a really nice way that you can contribute a tiny bit
mm,
financially every month, along with a whole group of other supporters to
mm,
help those taking the fight to
mm,
the hunts literally in the field
mm,
as well. And yeah, we've got lots planned, lots of things that I've revealed in this call that we've not actually spoken about before publicly, and other
mm,
secret projects. Also, something linked to veganism too,
mm,
which is I think you and the people watching this will be really interested
mm.
in that we're keeping under wraps. I definitely shouldn't say any more than that at the moment. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a really exciting one,
yeah.
and some other
Mm,
big things in the pipeline in the next year or so. I feel like we're only just
yeah,
getting started. I've got
yeah,
so much energy
yeah,
in me.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm excited to keep going
yeah,
and see what we can achieve for wildlife.
yeah. Brilliant. It sounds as if you just never, never stop. So we really appreciate you giving up your time today. We're going to end now, but please make sure that you check out Rob and his and his team's work at Protect the Wild. So I'm going to sign off now. So this is Anna Amelia from Northeast Animal Rights saying thank you very much to Robert from Protect the Wild, and goodbye for now.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.